Alright, so I seem to be talking to myself, which is fine, but I'm still going to make these videos. Yesterday we talked about how advertising is like brainwashing. Well, this is exactly why it's like brainwashing. Because this is easily manipulated. This is what advertising manipulates, this is what the movies manipulate. This is what's manipulated at all times, in all interviews, in all intervals, whether we like it or not, which is why I'm talking about let's not worry about words like ascension, because without this, your world will never change. People who follow Abraham Hicks, people who follow law of attraction, people who follow, or whatever, new age stuff, they always talk about the vibration that you're giving off and how the vibration reflects, your world and blah, 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 blah. Emotion. The more emotional you are, the worse your world can be. Now, there's two effects to this. You can have positive and you can have negative. Most people sit in the negative. Not because they want to, but again, because unconsciously this is where they're at. So, the more positive you put up, the brighter your reflection, the better it is. Problem is that unless you deal with your unconscious, it doesn't matter how much positivity you bring, because your ceiling is always going to be limited by your unconscious belief system, which is created through an emotional response to experiences that you've had and the way in which you've decided what those experiences were, whether they were positive or negative. So, your unconscious works from your emotion. Your world is created through your emotion. The media manipulates you through your emotion. Hollywood manipulates you through your emotion. Everything is an emotional response. Why? Because when you were a baby, you didn't start thinking and using your logic. First, you used your emotion. When you were a baby, you were put on the ground. You saw something you wanted, you went for that thing. You didn't know how you got there, you just were happy that you received your prize. So say there's a toy on the ground and it's halfway across the living room. You put a baby on the floor, that baby's going to get to the toy and that baby's going to be happy. But that baby's going to use emotion to move itself, not logic, because it's not going to realize that there's a logical pathway until after it's developed its emotional start. When you're a baby, you cry. You cry for food. Crying for food shows you where your attention comes from. So you start developing an emotional response to get things from your parents. So everything in this entire world, from start to finish, is emotion. Everything is based in emotion. We are not a logical creature. We are not a logical species. We are an emotional species. Mankind has tried to eliminate this belief system for, several hundred years. Well, maybe not several hundred, that's a lie. That's an over-exaggeration. But science tried to delete emotion from cause and effect. Luckily, some of the scientists, like, Einstein and other theorists, they all figured this out, because even Einstein says this is emotion, right? Emotion is energy. So, energy creates motion. So we now have energy creating, we create the energy via our motion, which creates motion, which equals life. Boom, there you have it. That is the secret key to everything that you will ever experience in your world. Now, you have energy. Energy is what the universe is. Energy, the universe is always in motion, so energy is always in motion, therefore emotion, which is our life. Now we have our unconscious and our conscious. These are the two things that will trip you up constantly. Now, one of the things that, we're talking about is, we talked about that, we talked about babies, we talked about how that happens. Now, if you want to believe in emotion, if you want to see how the manipulation happens, watch a horror film. That's the simplest way to do this. Watch a horror film. Turn on the film, turn off the music, watch the horror film, and decide for yourself whether those moments are actually thrillers, creepers, and scary, or whether it's actually rather like, okay, whatever, this is really boring. Because if it's really boring, you're not being emotionally manipulated. Now, there are some people who are more visual than auditory, so some of the stuff like darker scenes or, you know, going around the corner, whatever, that will do it. But Hollywood manipulates us through emotion. There's a new show on called Preacher. I think it's on AMC. Anyways, Preacher is run by one of the big producers is Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen, of course, is, you know, quite hilarious. But if you watch that show, they try to manipulate your experience within that show via bad soundtracks. Those soundtracks were created to play on your emotion. Now, there's another thing where it's been told that Toyota and certain car companies use smells to manipulate the unconscious, again, through an emotion, because if you like the smell, it gives you a good feeling. If you have a good feeling, you want that car. The same is true as when we use real estate. Real estate agents put brownies up, they cook brownies before they do a house showing. So the brownies can create a positive experience. Positive emotion, something you're going to want to buy. So everything that we're doing, we're constantly manipulated through our emotion. So this is what we have to work with when we're dealing with being twin flames and trying to change things, trying to fix things. This is what we're dealing in. This is what we're dealing in if we're trying to become more spiritual, right? We're dealing in emotion because the unconscious works through emotion. So, what's our biggest emotion? Love. As twin flames who, basically I'm going to preface it this way. I was introduced to Parananda, who's one of my spirit guides. Parananda tried to warn me to shut my mouth and not say anything, because all of a sudden I became excessively emotional. My twin was trying to deal with his emotions. I started wanting my emotional feeds dealt with. So all of my negative emotions, even though I was living in a positive, came out. Okay? So love being the pure essence of all things, there's two emotions. There's love and then there's fear. Right? Well, the fear, the unconscious issues, all of the negatives that I had decided, all of the experiences that I had decided were negatives came out and changed everything between me and my twin. My twin had his own negative issues, which he's still dealing with, and I mean, he's moved cities. He's thinking that the relocation thing is going to work for him, but you know, within a year everything goes back to normal and shit starts going wrong again. So anyways, when he came along, when love came, it brought out all of my negatives. This is what creates the runner. This is why I said before we had this experience, right? That we went in, there was love, but as soon as we felt it, as soon as we were touched, as soon as it became this experience, neither of us was ready for it, so we both rebelled. Now, a lot of twin flames think that it's only the runner that's to blame. Oops. That the only person to blame in this situation is the runner, but both parties are experiencing the same emotion. So as long as both parties are experiencing both emotions, this is never going to get resolved. Once you take away the emotion that you're experiencing, thereby, like I've been saying, all these videos, getting into your unconscious, once you do that, then you start moving back towards the goal being love. So, what I learned today is that the inner and the outer are a reflection of each other. We know this. This is, you know, not uncommon to most people who are learning, spirituality. But what I realized in this was that all of my negative experiences were a reflection of all the wounds that I had internally, which again validates all of the unconscious information as a response. So I'm going to draw a really bad image here, because like I've said before, I am not an artist. So here we have a person, non-gender, doesn't matter if it's a boy or it's a girl. Now, we're going to say that, hold on. Okay, so we're going to say that, you know, out here, the red is the energy, okay? Which is ironic because in Reiki, that's what they claim the energy looks like. So, your mind is experiencing your life, okay? But all of a sudden, something goes wrong. Okay? Something goes wrong at the age of, say, 12. Something goes wrong, you know, from when your parents got divorced and it was really messy, and, you know, so 12 years of age, we'll say 4 to 7 years of age. So at 12 years of age, you have this issue. For 3 years, you have this issue. And then, you know, you end up in high school, you're not popular, you know, you have this issue. So, and it goes on and on and on, and it continues like that. So what's happening, right? All of a sudden, you have energy blocks in your patterns. So, your unconscious is now working with those energy blocks. It's also trying to help you with all the positives that you're experiencing, the things that you don't necessarily, you know, need to recreate in order to learn, but suddenly, now you have all these blocks in your energy. These blocks in your energy become patterns. They become patterns because you make a belief system out of experience. Okay? So, let's say at 16 you didn't get closure with your first boyfriend. Well, as I've said before, so 16, no closure. So no closure means that somehow subconsciously you've decided that that means that you are not lovable. Okay? So you're not lovable. Now, suddenly, you know, again with the red, this is what you're creating. Over and over and over. So all the time that you're living and alive, your relationships are always dealing with this vibration. Why? Because you haven't dealt with that vibration. Because if that vibration is strong enough, where, again, if you're not lovable, and who wants to be avoided, who wants to be, you know, left in the dust, well, that is now affecting all of your relationships, because no matter what you're doing, when it comes to love, you're continually unconsciously telling yourself that you're unlovable. Your emotions are in a negative, right? Even though you have met the most perfect guy and everything was great, again, twin flames, same difference, everything was great, but you were always believing that you're not lovable. So when you believe that you're not lovable, and, you know, you come up against this, well, you tend to go this way. Now with my twin flame, he had the same problem, okay? He is constantly worried about never being loved, never being good enough, never being, you know, self-esteem. Well, what did he do? He went that way too. Because he wasn't strong enough to deal with love the way it was supposed to be. He wasn't sure that he was lovable. So he unconsciously responded and went his way. This, my friends, is your emotion. This is how you are manipulated by media. And I'm not saying like conspiracy theory bullshit, blah, 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 blah. What I'm saying is that if you want to ascend, if you want to up your game, these problems here, which reside in the unconscious and come out in your life, need to be dealt with. You need to get into your mind, you need to get into your thoughts, you need to get into your emotions. Because once you clear away your emotions, you clear away the negatives. Once you get out of the negatives, you get back into the positives, you go up and your vibration changes, everything shifts because you've shifted your patterns, you've shifted your belief system. So, lastly, because this will be a short one. Everything is here. Nothing changes throughout your life. You remain, like I've always said, you remain within your, this as this can change because this becomes filled with love. The more you know, the more you understand, the greater your understanding, the less problems you have. Now, I'm just going to say this one last thing, is that when it comes to things like magic, right, using ritual magic, I've seen many occultists who have, you know, maybe succeeded in talking to angels, talking to whatever, and succeeded on their pathway, who are the most arrogant sons of guns on the planet. And it's because they're not dealing, the occult doesn't deal in the unconscious. The occult deals in the unconscious insofar as making archetypes, using symbols to create archetypes or patterns to create beings. So in order for the unconscious to work, the occult makes symbols that make things come to light. But that bypasses, that keeps this going, doesn't really fill it here, keeps this going, and only works on the deep layers of the unconscious. Many people still remain unfocused because they never understand their own behavior. They never look at, you know, because I've been in that light, I've done the occult schools. That light can bypass the unconscious. It can bypass a person's behavior in the basically the human consciousness and open up the universal consciousness, which is our deep unconscious, and it keeps the behavior going because they don't deal in the emotion, they deal in the mind. And a lot of magicians don't want to deal in emotion because they don't think emotion is logical or valid, but yet emotion is extremely valid, extremely important. Because once the emotions are clear, it leaves room for light. And when you have a twin flame and you have a runner and you have trauma, what are you missing? You're missing light. So, I'm going to leave you one last time with negative experiences are reflections of wounds. So if you constantly see yourself having negative experiences, you know what's going on. The human mind is not that you know, difficult to understand and rationalize, but it comes from an emotional perspective. Once you start recognizing that all of your behavior patterns are rooted in an emotion, then you can start dealing with your emotions better. You can start healing your emotions because you start to realize that there's a way to get back into, oh, whatever, it's a door. Whatever. There's a doorway into your unconscious. You can get there. I use Reiki to get there because Reiki touches my emotions, Reiki heals my emotions, Reiki gets my emotions moving, and then my emotion through Reiki goes from my mind, creates a situation in reality, and that situation in reality teaches me what's going on in my mind. And this is what I've been trying to get a lot of you twin flames to pay attention to. But since nobody responds to these long-winded conversations anymore, I'm pretty much sure that most of you have given up on even trying to understand what I'm talking about. So most of the time I think I'm just wasting my time. But it's out there now, and somebody someday will understand what I'm saying. So thanks very much for watching. Take care.